Speaking of Kerry Packer, I'd like to talk briefly about a very interesting action that happened. Douglas Marr QC, who wasn't a QC at the time when he worked as senior counsel assisting Frank Costigan during the Royal Commission, I believe was subsequently, if you like, targeted by Kerry Packer, and some serious allegations were made by Kerry Packer against Douglas Marr.
He sued him. He actually sued him. Malcolm Turnbull was acting for Packer, and he issued a defamation proceeding against Doug Marr, alleging that Marr had defamed him. And I was briefed to act for Doug. And it was in Sydney, and I actually did a bit of defamation work in Sydney, as did Neil McPhee, because, as they told us, there weren't any really good jury advocates in Sydney, and Neil and I would go over there and fight cases against each other in Sydney. Anyway,
Pause.
Can you stop it there?
Yeah.
This is here tomorrow for me to pick one.
Oh, I thought you had Bichons.
No, and start
Yes.
that again.
All right. I'll just, when you're ready, Stuart. Okay. Yes, just we'll recap that question. You were alluding a few moments ago to Kerry Packer, and subsequently, I believe Kerry Packer actually sued one of your colleagues, Douglas Marr QC, who years ago was senior counsel assisting Frank Costigan during the Royal Commission, and it was a consequence of the work being done in the Royal Commission that Kerry Packer sued Douglas Marr.
Well, he sued him for defamation. I think Packer was pretty cross with Doug Marr, and there had been rumours circulating that, what was it, the lizard or the
goanna?
The goanna was Kerry Packer, and I think Packer thought, and I think a number of people thought, that the person who'd spread this around was Doug Marr. There wasn't a shred of evidence to support such a supposition. In any event, Malcolm Turnbull was acting for Kerry Packer, and I don't know, must have had a rush of blood, because they issued proceedings in defamation, and Turnbull knew about defamation law because he'd done a fair bit himself. And the flaw in the case was that they didn't plead any facts in relation to publication, when, where and whatever. It's an absolutely fundamental issue in a defamation case. I was briefed by Doug Marr's solicitors to act for Doug. Can't recall whether I was a silk or not at the time, but in any event, I went over to Sydney and I advised Doug that I thought we should take out a summons to strike out the proceedings because of this fundamental flaw in them. And he said, well, whatever you say, Jeff. He was a terrific client. So we went over to Sydney and appeared before David Hunt, who was the specialist defamation judge in Sydney, and Terry Tobin appeared. I think Terry might have been a silk at the stage. Anyway, he appeared for Packer. Well, I got up and we argued the point, and lunchtime came, and after lunch, Terry Tobin said to the court and to me, we're going to withdraw the proceedings. Well, I knew it was pretty important to Doug to have this matter fixed and not left sort of floating around to be tried again. So I took a bit of a punt without instructions, and I submitted to David Hunt that they couldn't withdraw the proceedings at this stage. They had to have the leave of the court to do it. The leave of the court shouldn't be granted, and that Doug Marr was entitled to be vindicated by having the proceedings dismissed, and I submitted the proceedings should be dismissed. Well, the matter was argued, and then Hunt reserved his decision. Strangely enough, Doug Marr was in Sydney at the time, although I didn't know it, and I ran into him at the airport, and I saw him and I said, Doug, you're not going to be very happy with me. I could have got you out of these proceedings, but I've taken a bit of a punt. I told him what I'd done. He said, whatever you say, Jeff. He was happy to go along with it. David Hunt gave a judgment not long thereafter in which he dismissed the proceedings and ordered costs. So Doug was in effect vindicated, and by what had happened, and that really was the end of it.
It was a courageous thing to do, though, especially against someone like Kerry Packer.
Well, some might say stupid, but it just seemed to me that it wasn't an entirely hopeless position to argue that they couldn't withdraw the proceedings. I mean, it was a pretty serious thing to do, to sue a member of the bar for defamation without a shred of evidence to support the allegation that he'd published anything. And Ma was entitled to be vindicated by having the proceedings thrown out. Anyway, that's what happened.
So it wasn't just a put up or shut up, it was actually costs, as you say, were awarded.
Proceedings were thrown out, in effect. So if they wanted to bring a proceeding, they knew they had to prove when, where and to whom any publication had occurred, and of course they had not a shred of evidence.
Did you have any thoughts subsequently when, I believe at the state funeral for Kerry Packer, James Packer once again alluded to the fact that his father's name had been smeared?
Well, that really had to do with the Royal Commission, and Packer outed himself. I mean, he wasn't named publicly by anyone until Packer chose to name himself. Was his name smeared? Well, who knows?